This is where we talk about languages and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
還元一級の先というのは、本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Morfar är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek! We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula gidelim. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is squab, and that also means elephant. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Ça, c'est ça, que c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça, sol qui sa, que nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco. Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyperpolyglotting avec Élise. Moi, c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça, c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux, surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Barbaz, okay, Barbaz is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno. Sotto 4 grossi sassi, 4 grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré, des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré, des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, ecco, la gente, è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scoprisci che quante lingue parlo, io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi, dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata da quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io. I find a computer or what? Here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, but sounds vaguely like hogun and hok, the hok in hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese, and that appears it is the exact same kind of character.
Okay, let me see.
Un chasseur, ça son chassé, ses chassés sont son chien de chasse.
Der dicke Dach.
Okay, der dicke Dachdecker deckt dir dein Dach, drum dank dem dicken Dachdecker, dass der dicke Dachdecker dir dein Dach deckt. Hola y bienvenidos al directo de Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. Yo soy Elisa, traductora, escritora y editora y comunicadora social con más de 20 idiomas de trabajo. Y aquí vamos a estar jugando videojuegos, sobre todo GeoGuessr, y hablando de idioma, la mejor forma de aprenderlo y caleta más. Zwei Zwetschgenzweigen zwitscherten zwei tschechische Schwalben. Tres tristes tigres tragaban trigo en un trigal en tres tristes trastos. Oh, I see. This is Diche Ishai Fui, which means, do you want food? But, yeah, are you hungry? That's also. How are the boys? Cocine tacos. Pozo Milao. Pote. Buenese. Proteine. Utros. Totopolo. In the designated chicken eating area, obviously. Okay, still 3 times I have to defeat him. And I don't have a whole lot of health left. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Monsieur. Livre. Liwe, livre.
Bucks.
Mustan kissan paksut posket.
Macieje.
Ja.
Ja. Si. Vysoký. Macieje. Proč? Níte. Počkej. A. Si.
Track 6.
Aspri Petra xesas pri apton ilioxexas proteri. Aspri Petra xesas pri apton ilioxesas proteri.
En coginio panas.
Oh boy.
Da ferad verda ferra ferda vetri.
Hakab. Hefed. Hefed. Hefed.
Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I'm Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages, and this is the stream where we're going to play some GeoGuessr, and we're going to look at more of the best and perhaps not so best of language learning YouTube. Heippa brutvarsti. No, mitäs kuuluu? No katsotaan. Daily Challenge. Like, okay, where the hell's the daily challenge? I had this problem yesterday, too. Ah, there we go. Okay. Here we go. How's my audio, everybody? As we start the daily challenge. Okay. It has a very... Hello, River Rune. Very continental feel to it, yeah. Predno sprava. Česko. Myslím, že to je Česko. Okay, I like to make sure because I've had a couple of times where I've gone like 15 minutes without anyone hearing anything. And missing my whole intro and stuff, so I'd like to be sure. Experimenting a bit with a new lighting setup again, which, if I'm lucky, will also be easier on my eyes. I have these LED sticks that I bought a long time ago. I've never had a good place to put them, and I think I may have found a place to put them. Shit. That's right, and we also have a time control that I just forgot all about. Endurova škola. Okay, yeah. Česko. Vlasakova. So Neni Praha. This is not Prague. I mean, you can just tell it just doesn't look Prague-y, but I also was just looking at the street sign. Pradelnaki City. Albert Supermarket. Okay. Let's say around Brno. 45.79, not too bad. Not exactly right either, but not too bad. Okay, we're on a railway line in a place that is not the US or Canada. Electrical railway line. Another way you know it's not the US or Canada. I mean, Italy seems like a possibility. South America less so because the railway. We are in Romania someplace. 42.39. High-pitched beeping sound. That is weird. Yeah, I mean, like, I noticed that when I'm looking at the audio input, when I'm looking at the graphic representation of the audio input on OBS, I see there's some sort of pulsating, but I can't hear it. So I don't know what that even is. Maybe something to do with HVAC. Okay. My immediate thought is maybe Nigeria? Kitengela. Hatari, okay. Now I see. Hey, Hexen. Yes, we are someplace that is, Swahili speaking. So Kenya or Uganda come to mind. And yes, indeed, 4822. Yes, not West Africa at all if it's Swahili. Okay, yeah, that's probably the HVAC. Okay, we got palm trees, lots of single-story houses, in fairly good shape. Yeah, kind of. Harmony Guest House. D Village. We're in D Village. Lalang Matsirat. Okay, this sounds very much like we are in Malaysia someplace, and there's a major airport nearby apparently, so 36.95 because Malaysia is huge and spread out. Okay, we have horses. Городской парк культуры и отдыха. Вас ждут аттракционы в развлекательные программы. Работают кафе. Cafes are working. So we're in Russia. Got that much. Oh, hang on. Выгул собак запрещен. Благовещенск. Благовещенск. Где это такое? I've heard of I know I've heard of Благовещенск. I am not sure at all where it is, but maybe is it a Moscow suburb? Possibly? We're about to find out, because there's no way in this time control to really narrow it down unless I just get lucky and and the name just shows up. No, we were not. 117 points. It was on the Chinese border. Yeah, a bit of a difference there. That is the thing about Russia. It is one of very few countries where you can get the country right and still only get 3-digit score. Like the US, you can do that, especially because there's Alaska. Brazil, I don't even think you can manage that because it's fairly compact. Okay, we're gonna play World. Here we go. Okay, we got mountains. Very sort of deserty looking mountains. And we're coast. Okay. Chile is my immediate thought. Yeah, that looks Chilean to me. Playa Dalmacia. Okay. A Croatian name because a whole lot of Avenida P. Quirico Moyo Julio. Ni idea. But the font, the layout and everything, that's right. We're northern Chile. This is definitely northern Chile. No other part of Chile looks like this. But the trouble is Chile's got a lot of north. I've been through the length of it, and wow, it takes a long time to get beyond it. It is a long-ass desert. Mejorando la pesca artesanal para un mejor país. Ampliación, Atracadero, Caleta, Charavalla, Iquique. Okay, so we are by Iquique, one of the main ports in the desert. Mollecita, Cabancha, Esmeralda, Marinero Desconocido. ¿Cómo se llama? Charavalla. Atracadero Charavalla. Okay. I feel like we're probably off on the side a bit. Waikiki, Apoquindo, Atlanta, Waikiki. Waikiki. Oh, that's what they did. I would... It sounds like Waikiki, I think. Okay, so yeah. I'm gonna guess it's probably around here someplace. 4760. Damn. Not quite. Okay, not breaking any personal records this time. But the northern Chilean landscape is easily one of the most recognizable on the planet, I think. That's up there with, like, Salisbury Cathedral or Stonehenge or something. Because there's just no place that looks quite like it. I mean, apart from neighboring countries that also include some of the Atacama Desert. Çok sezginler petrol. Ay gaz. Türkiye. Kahvaltı, menemen, tost, çay, çorba. You can get toast. They got a toast shop. Toast, tea, and soup. I wonder, how do they do toast? Like, is that just toast? Or, I mean, it's Turkey. They might do something very interesting to it because Turkish food is amazing. I've never had Turkish toast, but maybe it's just fucking toast. Never seen, like, a cafe, a travel caf, advertise toast as one of the things you can get. Come here, you can get toast. Driving one of these big semis, just buy a fucking loaf of sliced bread, put it on your put it under your bonnet. In a few minutes, you will have all the toast you need, and it will be toasty. It will also be, like, covered in melted plastic, so maybe that's not a great idea. Don't do that. Trouble is, Turkey's got quite a lot of motorways. Türkiye'nin gıda lojistiği lideri, the leader in overland logistics in Turkey. I started rewatching Sense8 in Turkish last night just for the hell of it. I've been meaning to rewatch that movie that show for a while. Understood a fair bit of the Turkish. Wait, there's like a sign up there, and somehow, no matter how close I get, it's like it is staying in the same relative distance. I'm approaching it, and it's not getting any bigger. Lezzetinde tat var. Okay, so another like travel calf kind of place, I guess. This isn't necessarily the most informative thing. Surely they're going to have a sign coming up sometime soon that says where we're on our way to. Maybe I'm on the wrong side of the road for that, actually. I mean, I am on the wrong side of the road for that, but for some reason this is the only side of the road we get to be on. We're headed more or less due east. So I'm guessing sort of a major east-west highway in Turkey that possibly narrows it down. If you know how the highway system there is laid out. Okay, so the weather changed. Ah, damn it. I hit the wrong button on my mouse. Okay, we're back where we're supposed to be. And we got signs coming up. Good. There's another sign for petrol. And toast! We get more toast. 2 kilometers, and you get toast. Okay. Türkiye'deki arkadaşlarıma bu normal mı? Tost dükkanı normal mı? Türkiye'de. We're just driving farther and farther away from the toast shop, and still no sign of where we are or where we're headed. Just farther and farther away from toast. Oh, we got a rest stop. There's got to be something near a rest stop that's gonna say distances at least. Messing around with these LED sticks. Yeah, I don't know about this one. This is supposedly romantic, where, like, or sunburnt. Could be sunburnt. Okay, we got a sign coming up. Maybe it will tell us where the hell we are. Come on. I gotta tell you how many kilometers you've gone in your quest to figure out where exactly you are. Oh no, just another travel calf advert. But not one with toast. Come on, you gotta give me something sometime. I mean, it's a pretty drive, but, I mean, not that exciting. Come on. You know you want to tell me where we are? There's gotta be a distance. It's a fucking highway. How has there not been a single sign telling us the distance to someplace? What, we're getting off? I wasn't trying to get off. I want to stay on the main road, damn it. Okay, fuck it. This is... I'm gonna say somewhere around there. 116 kilometers off. I wasn't too bad. Okay, what's this? UPS. But that does not look like a UPS vehicle in the US. We got hedges, we got a narrow-ass road. We've got a jogger. I mean, this is setting off all of the England alarm bells. I feel like we were probably on the B65732862109, someplace in, like, I don't know, fucking Dorset or something. Yeah, okay, now we got horses. So, yes, definitely feeling like an English kind of place. Yeah, the infrastructure isn't great. That scans. Soon enough, we will find a placard belonging to the Countryside Alliance demanding that Right to Roam campaigners be banned as a terrorist group. Wild camping is Hamas. Ooh. Okay, yes, West Hatch Lane. Okay, that is the right format and font. Okay, country. We've got the country, and now we've got a road that may actually be informative to us. Oh, hang on. Okay, that's already informative. There's no Welsh on it. Maidenhead, okay, A3095. Okay, we're in Kent. I think. A3095, A330 to Maidenhead. And how are we gonna, and Gellets Hill. And we're south of Maidenhead. Okay. That's not too difficult. And not Kent, though. Kent would be A2 something or other. Aldershot Crowther. Oh, that's Bracknell. It was covered up by the shrubbery. Ah, there's Maidenhead. There we go. Bracknell. Binfield. Sounds like a lovely place. Martin's Heron. Like just the one. Okay. So A3095. The A330. Bagshot. There's A322. A330, A3095. Eatonwick. There's A308. B3024. Okay. A330. There we go. A330 Gellets Hill. There we are. Got it. Right by Moss End, which is not to be mistaken for Moss Side. Okay, it's going to be just north of Warfield, I guess. Oh, there's Bracknell, Maidenhead, there's Warfield, A3095, Frost Folly Car Park. That's a great name for a car park. 4997, there we go. In the Basingstoke suburbs. Okay, we got some brutalism here. Ufficiul Judizian Satumare. Satumare! That is where the Satmar Hasidic sect, that you may remember from the show Unorthodox on Netflix. This is where they're originally from, Satumare. Or, as it's known in Yiddish, Satmar. Now I have to remember... Ah, there we go. Satumare. Ufficiul Judizian. Okay, we need a street name. Getting a lot more centro militar județean, satul mare. Biroul informare recrutare. Comenduirea în garnizoane, satul mare. Okay, so the garrison command post. Garrison command post of Satu Mare. Boulevardul Transylvania, Transylvania Boulevard. Neat. No Pardon Pub. That's harsh. Oh, we were on Transylvania Boulevard. Cool street name. Zion Brunch and Breakfast. So, does it, like, colonize neighboring brunch and breakfast restaurants and just, like, pass their shit off as its own? Okay. Urban area. Does not really feel... It's definitely not the US. It's someplace quite sunny. Déviation, chemin mange. Okay, but those signs don't look French to me. I mean, they're in French. They're very clearly in French. À découvrir absolument dans l'agglomération de Pau. Ah, oh, okay, south of France. I'm pretty sure. Wait, no, that's the Balkans. Pau, there we are. Okay, but let's see if we can narrow this down even more. Street name would be very helpful. Okay, we're by the A64. And Centre Hospitalier, François Mitterrand. De tour. Zénith de Pau, Truffaut. Cet hôpital, c'est où? Zénith, Tranchon, Forêt domaniale de Bastard. It's the Bastard Forest. Forêt domaniale de Bastard. The Forest of Bastards. That's where West Streeting was born. So somewhere around here. Condorcet. 49.94 though. If I'd done better in the previous rounds, I would be almost breaking my record right now. 24,374. It's pretty good. Okay, we're in Canada. That was simple enough. Okay, so we're in Canada and what? Visitor center. For what though? Okay, so we're someplace in Canada. Okay, we got... Are those mountains or those clouds? They're blurry is what they are. Okay, mountains. Now, that suggests we're probably in the Rockies. That is the main mountain range there. So that suggests to me probably Alberta or BC. Valemount. Okay, so... Okay, let's jump over the Atlantic. Vernon, Kelowna, Summerland, Revelstoke. Ah, Valemount, we got it. Oh, right by Jasper. Been to Jasper very, very briefly on the train from Toronto to Vancouver. Gorgeous place. Horrible what happened in the fire. It's just on the BC side. Okay. Okay, we're headed north and we just entered Valemount. Say we're around here. 49.96. Okay, on track to beat my personal record. Okay, urban area. Lots of low effort murals. Farmacia. Wait, pharmacie and farmacia. Okay. Now I'm confused. That's two different languages on that sign, and I've never heard of them coexisting. Traducer. Ah, farmacie, farmacia. Oh, this is Romanian. That isn't two different words. That is... Okay, farmacie, farmacia are like the indefinite and definite forms of the word for pharmacy. So there we go. We're in Romania. Specialiști in analise medicale. Okay, so we're some urban place in Romania. Clinica oftalmologica. Getting a lot of Romania lately. Okay, I mean, feels like a major city. Coiffura. Floridona. Romanian is an interesting Romance language because it's full of Turkish and Slavic stuff. Contuare intelligente de apa. Smart water meter. Sounds like the smart thing to do would be not to allow that to be installed on your taps, personally. Bucharest, Brasov, E85, E85, and we're between Bucharest and Brasov. Okay, so E85. I mean, there's Brasov. Here's Bucharest. Okay, weirdly enough, the E85 does not actually seem to go to Brasov. Oh, okay. So... Oh, I see. Bucharest is the E85. And Brasov is the alternative. Casa de Moda. Okay, I think I know more or less where we are. Oh, hell no, I did not. We were in Baco. Logic was sound, point was wrong. 4501, not terrible still. Okay, more urbanness. Okay, the font on those stop signs is a bit funky. It's like they use small caps. Look at that. So, I'm guessing we're in France. Home of funky street sign fonts. Valencia. Centro para Mayori. No, we're not in France, we're in Spain. We're in Valencia, apparently. $49.95. 14,492. Oh wow! I am actually just this side of beating my record right now. My record is 24,991. No, that's 14,492. I am not just this side of beating my record. False alarm. I'm just this side of being 500 points short of beating my record. which is still a pretty good score, I should say. But not as exciting as beating my almost perfect record. Okay, so we're in someplace fairly urban-ish. Oyo Ryokugaku Kenkyūjō. Okay, Japan is my immediate thought here. Senta. Yeah, we're in Japan. So, 日本のどこなのかというのが次の疑問なんです。なんか大学の近くだが、応用力学研究所、深海機器力学実験棟。Interesting. Okay, they do. This is an experimental laboratory for deep sea instrumentation. Okay. That tells me we're someplace coastal, but being Japan, that doesn't really narrow it down a whole lot, because it's islands. Nothing's exactly landlocked in Japan. Bollards. Kyushu Daigaku. Okay, that narrows it down. Kyushu Daigaku. Kyushu Daigaku はどこなんだ？福岡か。I want to go to... I want to fly into Fukuoka sometime. Because the IATA code for Fukuoka Airport is FUK. And you can buy, of course, you can buy like tote bags and souvenirs and shit with FUK written on them. And I want one. I want an FUK tote bag. But we don't know for sure that this is the right place because I'm not sure what city Kyushu Daigaku is in. The university is just named after the island it's on. And the trouble with that is there are a bunch of places on the island that could potentially support a university. And every single one of them is coastal, so that all of them could have like some sort of deep sea diving lab. Deep sea instrumentation lab. Kyushu Daigaku. Okay. I mean, this is all Kyushu Daigaku. It's all coast. Okay, so this university on Kyushu has to have a coastal campus. Let's see, there's Miyazaki Daigaku. Tayoshi. Hitotsuba. Okay, I don't see Kyushu Daigaku there. だから西に向かって鹿児島はどうかと。明治維新ふるさとか与次郎山田電機鹿児島国際大学三山公園和田生協病院東海町県役所水族館OK 鹿児島でもないなじゃあ熊本4番新港Okay, this is actually not working as well as I thought as a method. So we're going to look around the city and see if we can find something that actually tells us what city Kyushu Daigaku is in fact in. Okay, we've ended up in the middle of nowhere again. Oh, hang on, there's a sign. Not a legible one, though. Okay, how did I end up in a dead end again? Okay, here we go. This... Okay, we can't get out of the car park of Kyushu University. That's the problem. That's why I can't find anything. That's why this is so complicated. Because we're just stuck in the car park. Sasebo. Sasebo Burger Big Man. Sasebo Burger Big Man. Fukuoka. I'm just gonna say Fukuoka. Okay, I wasn't wrong. Farther inland than I would have thought, given deep sea equipment testing. Okay, one more and then we're gonna go on a little bio break. Okay, weird little mailboxes. Like, yeah. Give way, so I feel like this is Aotearoa. Let's see. Summerhaven Place. That name does not help. Smiley Close. I mean, this could be Australia as well. We haven't really seen anything that truly rules that out. Although mailboxes like that are something I've only seen so far in NZ. Ruahine Street, Egmont Park. Okay, yeah, we're in NZ. North Island. Probably Auckland. Not Auckland, we're in Tauranga. $44.95 though, not bad. Okay, I am going to take a little bio break. I will be back in a few minutes. Hi, and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I am Elise, translator, editor, and writer with 20 working languages, and this is where we talk about languages and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
E l'ospitale?
還元一級の先というのは、本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は、Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Mod för att tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Vendetta Day, so how do you know pull out today? Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is squad, and that also means elephant. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Ça, c'est ça, che c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça. Sol chi sa che nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco.
Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyper Polyglotting avec Élise. Moi c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux, surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bangvas, okay, Bangvas is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon.
Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno. Sotto 4 grossi sassi, 4 grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, ecco, la gente... è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scoprisce che quante lingue parlo. Io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata a quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io. I buy a computer or what? And here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, but sounds vaguely like Hogun and the Hok in Hogun in Korean or Waku in Japanese, and that appears it is the exact same kind of character.
Okay, let me see.
Un chasseur, ça son chassé, ses chassés sont son chien de chasse.
Der dicke Dach.
Okay, der dicke Dachdecker deckt dir dein Dach, drum dank dem dicken Dachdecker, dass der dicke Dachdecker dir dein Dach deckt. Hola y bienvenidos al directo de Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. Yo soy Elisa, traductora, escritora y editora y comunicadora social con más de 20 idiomas de trabajo. Y aquí vamos a estar jugando videojuegos, sobre todo GeoGuessr, y hablando de idiomas, la mejor forma de aprenderlo y caleta más. Zwei Zwetschgenzweigen zwitscherten zwei tschechische Schwalben. Tres tristes tigres tragaban trigo en un trigal en tres tristes trastos. Oh, I see. This is Diche Ishai Fui, which means do you want food? But yeah, are you hungry? That kind of thing. How are the boys? Cocine da boy. Posso Milao. Pote. When is it? Proteine. Protoculo. In the designated chicken eating area, obviously. Okay, still 3 times I have to defeat him.
And I'm back. And I think we will change gears now. I had a suggestion from the comments from Joe Renee Languages of some videos to check out, and I thought we'd have a look at that. Let me just see. Once I get the window open. So this is from Psycholingo, who I haven't actually watched before. I did, however, once clip him saying comprehensible input for a montage of people saying comprehensible input in a video I did about what input theory, the input hypothesis, actually is and is not. But other than that, I haven't actually looked at him, so I'm kind of curious to hear what he has to say. This is called No, That's Not How Language Learning Works. Here's the Truth from 10 days ago. And I'm going to drop that link in chat. And he's responding to our old mate, Evil D. The D in Evil D, as you may know, stands for Dunning-Kruger.
He's been summoned.
Okay, first of all, I just have to say, love the intro there.
I have been summoned. Hey guys, today we're going to talk about
I don't know who this is. Angelo Van Roo. I'm not gonna say that last name.
Oh, wait. Okay, so he's responding to the video I was responding to Evil D responding to. So, okay, interesting continuity here.
So he made a video and tagged Evil Dia, and then Evil Dia made a response, and he name dropped me. Very briefly, but I have been summoned, and so here I am, where we're going to discuss his opinions on language learning. So let's get going.
Okay. First of all, again, production values, love them. I really need to do a better intro for this channel. Like, the channel intro I've got right now is about the Duolingo speedrun, which I was doing, like, 2 years ago, before I got completely bored with it. And now this channel is, like, yeah, I've done so much more with this than that, so I really need to spend some time actually clipping something good together for that. I mean, and when I see production values like this, I'm immediately reminded of that.
It makes total sense to me, so let me explain. In my opinion, you are not learning a language, or you shouldn't learn a language to be able to say X thing. Like, oh, you can say this, I will do this method because I can say that faster if I do it.
I mean, at this point, we've all seen
So basically,
Angelo van Rooyen say these exact things like 5 times, I think.
what you're saying is, I'm learning this language so I can say that, so I can have this result of, you know, saying something faster, so that's why I'm using this method. But you're not learning the language to be able to say something. That's not a valid goal. Speaking as a goal doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Speaking should not be the goal. You should not say, I am learning this language because I want to say this in the language, or I want to say X. That doesn't work. Let me explain why. If that was the goal, then what you could simply do is remember whatever you want to say.
Yeah, so I mean, just to catch anyone up who did not already see us looking at this, and then looking at Evil Dia, looking at this, etc., 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 etc. So the idea here is, like, if you're just learning the language to say certain things, that doesn't really make sense. Because, first of all, you could just memorize those things, and for another thing, the point of saying those things is usually that somebody will say something back to you, and if all you've done is learn enough to say certain things, the whole interaction breaks down at that point.
Say I wanted to say, I really like doing X. Then I could just go online, translate that from Dutch, my native language, to, let's say, Japanese, remember that, and then, hey, I can say this phrase, right? So I could just remember it, but that's not how language works. If language worked like that, then right now I would have to remember every single word that I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I mean, I do have a script, but, you know, you get the idea.
Okay, I'm sorry it took me this long to pause. I sort of am confused as to what he's trying to say. Like, you don't learn a language for the sake of speaking. That's what it sounds like he's saying. And so he's saying, like, you wouldn't, if you wanted to just speak, then you could just go online and, like, memorize phrases and, like, use that, and then you can speak. But, like, when people say, I want to speak a language, they are not implying they only want to speak the language. They're implying, I want to be able to communicate effectively in the language, which involves listening and speaking.
Yeah, that, okay, we're on the same page, Psycholingo and I. Neat bow tie. I like the bow tie.
So he said at the beginning of this, in my opinion, yes, and his very ill-informed, likely not educated in this field opinion, I suppose, yeah.
I have something to say, a meaning, like a message with a meaning. I think of that and I just know how to say it. I know how to say it because, well, that's just how language works. I think of it and the speech, just, it comes out, you know? So like I said.
Okay, first of all, language sort of works that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to give him credit for some difficulty articulating his meaning. Because it seems like, I feel like he is saying certain things. He's trying to express something that is actually, in many ways, a somewhat complex idea around how language works, and is having difficulty articulating it. So I'm not My approach is I'm not like laying that every single bit of that on the the gold standard.
Where when we talk, we don't have to consciously think of everything we're trying to say. But if you had to give a speech on a topic, even in your native language, on a topic that you're not used to talking about, you would struggle with finding the words, which is why you would need to stop sometimes. That's all.
Yeah, but I think that's only part of what he's getting out there. Because it's like you would possibly struggle to find the words. I've talked about this as well. How fluency is very much a relative thing, and it kind of depends what you're trying to talk about and how familiar you are with it. If you like actually know about it, or whether you're talking about something you don't know anything about. Though, as Evil Dia shows, you can talk about something that you don't know anything about and be very fluent if you don't care whether you know anything, whether what you're saying makes any sense. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect, I would say. I think, but there's another aspect to it. Yeah, you would struggle to find the words for what you're saying, and I think part of what's going on here is that Angelo was having difficulty expressing what he was trying to say here, for the about the internal process that leads to words coming out of our mouths. But there's also the aspect of there are bits that we do not struggle with, like the structures of the language, for the most part, are not something we have to consciously give a whole lot of thought to. Even if we're having trouble thinking of the words, we will sometimes trail off, and then you'll get some structural weirdness going on because we sort of lost the thread of what we were talking about. But like structurally, we're not having to go, okay, relative clause now. Okay, we're going to do this in a question, so we got to do structurally dependent word inversion now and stuff like that.
Also why, even though if you watch certain like linguists on YouTube, they tend to either like read off of a script, or they tend to do a lot of like cuts and edits in between, because they actually struggle to find the words to talk about the topics they're talking about. That usually, not always, but it usually is an indicator that they don't know exactly what they're talking about. And there are a lot of people like that on YouTube who use their degrees or their years of experience or their expertise in one part of the field to claim they have expertise in the language teaching part of the field, which they don't. I'm not going to name any names, but maybe...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I know exactly who he's talking about here. But, and, yeah, that is a thing that exists. And, I mean, part of that is also people will often think that if they know a lot about one area of something, that is immediately transferable to other areas. I mean, that is a thing that people can just legitimately do. And sometimes bits of it will be transferable and they will make some sense for a while. But yeah, I mean, I would also add, if you're ill-prepared, or you're just not a great off-the-cuff some people are just shitty at speaking off-the-cuff. They just aren't very good at it. So they're going to struggle to find words, even if they know everything about it. Or if they just lack confidence talking about it. So there are lots of reasons, apart from just either difficulty with the language or difficulty with the subject matter, that can lead to that kind of awkwardness we're talking about. I feel that's important to point out.
You can guess.
The problem is when people are starting to learn a language and they say, hey,
Yes, I can
want
guess.
to know how to say this.
Because there is one particular creator that I'm thinking about who likes to make a big point of his degrees, and his work, which is in a very specific area of linguistics. But he speaks with extreme confidence and peremptoriness about areas that are nothing to do with anything, including that are nothing to do with anything in his expertise. That it really, it is the same overall field, but a totally different fucking building.
They are going to remember how to say it. They're going to look it up, right? And the whole point of this natural learning, ALG, is to not look things up. You just expose yourself to the language, and your brain will make these connections. It will make a big language model with neural connections.
Which is which is an oversimplification of input-based methods, but I mean, a reasonable one. There's a lot going on there in terms of what kind of exposure to what kind of stuff and things like that you could get into a lot of detail in. And when you talk about it at this level of generality, I have to say it does sound kind of like bullshit, because it sounds too easy, and we learn to distrust things that sound too easy. But as a sort of very broad strokes approach to explaining it, it's not terrible.
And based off of those connections and this model, you will be able to say whatever you want to say. If you
The idea, though, of the neural connections is silly. I mean, it does that, but what I mean is, like, if you learn any other skill, if you use your brain with anything, guess what it does, y'all? It uses neural connections. That's, like, we say that, like neurons that fire together, wire together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, neural connections are the thing. And like, when we talk about the learning acquisition distinction that Krashen makes, for example, and that researchers following his work make, where we're saying the difference between learning a language and acquiring it, we're not saying one makes neural connections and the other one doesn't. There are different kinds of neural connections. There are the kind of neural connections that will allow you to speak in an informed way about how a language works, which is what learning a language leads to, because you're able to say, well, this is what the partitive does, this is what the inessive and the abessive do, and you have ma nominalization and inen nominalization, or whatever. But that does not actually, those are not the same kind of connections that will allow you to actually have a conversation and finish and understand what you're talking about. You can be very knowledgeable in this sort of learning a language sense with lots of deep neural connections around the descriptions of the structures and all that sort of stuff, and still not be able to have a conversation and finish.
So, like, the more you're using certain neurons for specific tasks, your brain will actually strengthen those connections, which is why things become, like, procedural types of memory. So, like, language, for example, walking, riding a bike, those are all procedural. In a lot of ways, many things that are procedural are first learned through declarative means. There's a lot of things that we learn through, like, explicit means of learning. We don't have to, though, but we do. So, for example, like, a long time ago when my...
I like... Yeah, the edit cut there of the dog. Did you see that? There was a nose that just sort of popped up.
Certain neurons for specific...
Look at the bottom left corner. My head may be in the way.
tasks, your brain will actually strengthen those connections, which is why things become like procedural types of memory. So like language, for example, walking, riding a bike, those are all procedural. In a lot of ways, many things that are procedural are first learned through declarative means. There's a lot of things that we learn through like explicit means of learning. We don't have to though, but we do. So for example, like... He got most of that edit. There's just a dog nose up there for half a second. There we go. Can you see that? Just barely. Just wanted to point that out. A long time ago, when my dad was younger, for example, people would like throw their kids into a pond or a lake and just like use that to teach them how to swim. They learned how to swim, sure, but if you took those people...
Well, I mean, the ones who came back out of the lake again had learned something about how to swim anyway. You could say 100% of the survivors of this method learned something about how to swim.
How to swim through being thrown in a body of water, and they learned naturally. And like, if you compare them to people who have been trained in swimming with like a teacher or an instructor, so explicit forms of education for teaching someone how to swim, and you put them in a race against each other, the person who was trained is more likely to going to have better form, which means they're going to get better speed, and they're going to have better muscle, different whatever. Like there's going to be different things that help them with this. Language learning, especially for adults, is different than it is for children. And I don't understand why people don't understand this. They think, I learned that way as a child, so I'm going to learn that way as an adult. Okay, if you're a 60-year-old grandma who wants to lift weights, can you lift weights? Sure, as long as your health allows you to.
You see, this is not a good analogy. Because again, there isn't so... I mean, let's see where he's going with this, but I don't think this is a great analogy. Because for one thing, when we talk about this, learning like a child or something like that, that people often use when they're refuting this, And I'm not saying he's doing this. I want to be clear. I want to hear the rest of this. I haven't watched him before. But we're often making an oversimplification. We're saying we're using the same ingredients, the same underlying principles that first language acquisition also proceeded on. But that doesn't mean we're doing it in exactly the same way. Because apart from everything, the substrate, your brain is different. It's got stuff in it that it didn't have the first time you acquired a language. There are all sorts of reasons it is different. There's a level of consciousness in the process that is different. All those sorts of things. But the underlying thing, that there is comprehensible input from which messages are being understood, and gradually a mental account of the language is forming as a result of that. That is still going on.
So, but it's going to be different than an 18-year-old who's getting started, right? Like, you're going to have different regimens, you're going to have different goals. This is stupid.
Look something up.
I mean, it's stupid, but it's also, I don't think anyone who is saying this literally is meaning it literally. I think that what happens is there are a lot of very oversimplified treatments of this that don't distinguish between method and ingredient, that often, some of them are by people who have not actually gotten extremely explicit about the nature. They understand, okay, I mean, and I understand this because I come from this. You hear, okay, you've learned through input-based methods of your own devising. You just sort of gradually, through trial and error, notice that certain things worked. And then you hear about Krashen, and you hear him talking about it, and you hear other people who have learned a bunch of languages, largely through self-education, talk about their approaches, and they also operate on similar principles. But that doesn't mean you can necessarily give a sophisticated discussion of it. And so we end up using these sorts of analogies.
Actively, and you're trying to remember it or whatever, that defeats the whole point of natural learning, right? And so you have a problem.
It's the same thing with phrases like natural learning, which are more something to do with marketing than they are to do with explaining what the actual mechanisms that are going on are. And that's the trouble, because a lot of the responses to this sort of thing will be responses to people who are only hearing buzzwords like that, or they're responding to somebody who is not necessarily has an understanding of what they're talking about, but it's not an understanding that is on the level of being able to give a sophisticated explanation of it. My tendency with that is to give a certain amount of leeway there.
So if you want to say something, and therefore, let's say you look it up, or you learn it, or you remember it, or whatever, that's not natural learning. But if you want to do it...
See, this is where the term natural learning kind of breaks down. Because... what do you mean by natural learning? It is a natural thing to seek out information about the thing you want to know. And that will lead to certain processes in your brain that are certainly natural processes. Neurons fire, synapses, synaptic connections form, stuff, all those various things. But the thing is, when we're talking about this, when we're talking about language acquisition, we have to be a little bit more explicit about exactly how that's working. Krashen would talk about these sorts of things of explicitly looking something up, for example, to a certain extent, I think, as using the monitor. The monitor being this sort of declarative, explicit knowledge of how the thing is supposed to work that can sometimes be assist in filling gaps in this sort of acquired knowledge.
Natural way you want to acquire it, then there's a problem, because let's say that same phrase or whatever you want to say, the chances that you are going to be exposed to that specific phrase in a natural environment, being exposed to the language, those chances are just very slim.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't remember. I skimmed through this video, so I didn't actually see this. I mean, there's some phrases where you would absolutely hear it often, and that wouldn't really be the problem. Like, if you look up nonin and you memorize nonin in Finnish, you will absolutely hear that phrase a lot. But the trouble is that that doesn't necessarily get you very far. I mean, you can certainly, it will get you far in pretending to speak Finnish, as long as nobody asks you anything that requires a response. But, yeah, I mean, that to me isn't fundamentally the problem here.
Probably not going to happen very soon for like thousands of hours. And so you...
I can't stand this guy. I'm only a few minutes in and I already can't stand him. It depends on the phrase you're learning. If you learn the phrase like ni hao, you're going to use that a lot. I just used it today multiple times with people.
Yeah.
You're going to need thousands of hours. Depends on the phrase, my bro.
kind of have to just trust this process that you are going to expose yourself to the language, and at some point you will hear this word or whatever and you can use it.
I mean, see, there are things, I would agree that there are, like, aspects that you have to, where you have to trust the process, trust that it works, because a lot of unconscious learning, implicit learning, is like that. You just have to, you realize that you've learnt it when you have occasion to show that you've learnt it, essentially. But I don't think that trusting that you will eventually hear certain words makes all that much sense, because that's the thing. That's not, I mean, you can select you can select your sources of input for things that you are likely to hear about, that you're likely to hear, because they're, you know, because they include content related to conversations that you're likely to have. Hi Erica, hi Giga M. We're looking at Psycholingo, who is reacting to a video we have reacted to somebody else reacting to. Joe Rene Languages in my comments on YouTube suggested this, so I'm checking it out. I've never actually watched Psycholingo before, though I clipped him once for a montage of people saying comprehensible input for a video I did on the input hypothesis and what it is and is not a few weeks ago, but yes. You missed us going in GeoGuessr to the place where the Satmar Hasidic sect was born, to actual Satmar, Satumare.
That kind of goes against what he just previously said. Like, you shouldn't learn words because you're not going to see them for a long time. Okay, but then, like, you're going to see them eventually. So.
Reactception. Yeah. I mean, this is like how I've ended up reacting to people reacting to Ethan Klein on the other stream. And now somehow I've ended up in this endless loop of reacting to people reacting to Evil D reacting to people. And one day, one of them will react to me reacting to things, and then I will have to react to them reacting to me reacting to the things. The which what?
Then don't worry about it. Like, what's the difference? Okay, like if I learn it now and then find it later, what's the difference? Tell me. Did I say that?
Yeah, and again, you can select when you're like doing an input-based method. You can select for the stuff that you actually are likely to see, that you actually care about having conversations about. Like, that's why I'm reading law books in Finnish, for example. Because in the context where I intend to work with the language, I'm going to encounter, like, legal language, the Satmar sect, the Satmar Hasidic sect, the one that, you remember a show called Unorthodox? It was on Netflix, about Deborah Feldman, who escaped this sect and ended up moving to Berlin, where she is annoyed the hell out of, like, much of the establishment by pointing out how many of the like sort of Jewish establishment in Germany are not in fact Jewish.
For time, and how much time did I save? And if I am not
yes, well, they originate from a place called Satumare in Romania, also known as Satmar. And that's where GeoGuessr dropped us.
Close to it earlier and I find it later. Do I learn it slower or faster? Like he knows nothing.
Cannot choose what you want to learn. That's the problem. And so if we come back to what this guy is saying, like,
What do you mean you can't choose what you want to learn? I mean, if you it will require assistance to choose what you want. If you're talking about like the sort of materials you want to work with in order to get usable, comprehensible input, I mean, it may require some help in order to find them. It's help that I provide. But you certainly can. I mean, it just requires... I mean, there's, like, skill involved in that. There's, access required for that. But you certainly can.
Can say some simple stuff like, what did he say again? Order food and find a bathroom, for example. I don't know how to say simple stuff in Japanese, and like I said, I think this is normal, and I just explained why that is. The chances...
Well, okay. But what do you know how to say? Okay... You don't know how to say simple stuff in Japanese, but you do know how to say other things? I mean, like, I don't know what his background in Japanese is, to be clear. So I'm not sure where he's going with this. Like, is he saying he can understand all sorts of stuff in Japanese, but he can't say, how to ask where the bathroom is? Or what? I don't understand exactly where he's going here.
Chances of you encountering that language in a natural environment are just low. If you would...
I feel that he has taken his leg down from the chair.
You guys. The chances of encountering, like, people talking about where the bathroom is or, like, food you're going to eat is low. Does he live on Earth? Because on a daily basis.
See, okay, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm giving more of the benefit of doubt to Angelo van Roya than I ought to. But I only skimmed through his video originally because somebody else in my YouTube comments had suggested I watch Evil Day reacting to him. And I wanted to get to that, but I also wanted to get some idea of what this guy was talking about. But, like, I mean, admittedly, these may not be, these don't seem like rare topics of conversation to me. Let me just say.
A daily basis, I use the bathroom. I don't know about you guys, but I use the bathroom often. And I eat also. I don't know if that's like a old-fashioned kind of thing, but...
maybe they're related.
I eat, and because I eat, guess what I talk about on a daily basis in Chinese? The bathroom and food. Wow, surprise. So for him to say like, well, that's not surprising. We don't talk about that much.
What's with the clutch cargo mouth?
Does he not use the bathroom? Does he not eat? If you're out in public, especially if you're with other people, guess what you do when you go out? You go around, you walk around for a while. Oh, we're hungry. Hey, let's eat something. Oh, what are we going to eat? I don't know. What sounds good to you? I'm not sure. I'm thinking about this place. Oh, but isn't the food spicy there? I don't like that. You see how these conversations come up on a daily basis. And then if you're dating someone...
Yeah, I mean, okay, it is a weird choice of thing to say is coming up rarely. Although I guess, okay, maybe where he's coming from here is he's learning Japanese, but he's in the Netherlands, and therefore he is not around people speaking Japanese a lot. So he has less occasion to talk about what he's going to eat in the bathroom.
As we all know, for some reason, partners, be it like a spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, we always have difficulties with deciding what to eat. So then we have to have these 30-minute long discussions of like, well, what should we have for dinner? Or what should we have for lunch? Or, so I'm assuming he's single.
To ask me how to make a reservation in Japanese.
That's cold.
I wouldn't right now be able to do it because I've never been exposed to a situation where I had to do that.
Yeah, I mean, again, this sounds a lot like he's talking about he's learning the language in a place where the language isn't spoken. So lots of daily activity, like giving him maximum benefit of the doubt here. What he's talking about is he's not in a place where he's carrying out these sorts of obviously, normal daily activities. And so he has no occasion to do it. that I feel like that is probably what he means to be saying. I don't think he's saying that he does not need to ask about food or the bathroom because he is photosynthetic.
Where I saw someone make a reservation for me to, absorb that language and acquire it and really internalize it and be like, oh, that's how he's making a reservation right now, I can probably do that as well. Now
Okay, so because you haven't been exposed to it, and he's going at this from the ALG method, which, to be honest, is starting to get a little irritating how...
I will say, I am not at all familiar with the ALG method. I literally, the first I ever heard of ALG was this guy's video that we're both responding to.
Like, so many clearly misinformed, clearly, like...
Hang on, I gotta make an adjustment here because I'm, like, covering up Psycholingo's face. And that's not great. I want people to be able to see Psycholingo's face. So... There we go.
Nothing better to do. People are just talking about how ALG is so great, it's so proven, it's so this, it's so that. And yet, there's no research on it. And yet, it's not a commonly used method.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that because I was feeling a bit awkward that I'm watching all this stuff about people talking about ALG and I've never done shit with I've never heard of ALG.
But if it's so amazing, why would, like, listen, I know I've heard people talk about big language, sure, whatever. Textbook companies produce textbooks a certain way because they sell. I get it. But there are language teachers who care. There are language teachers who want their students to learn. There are language teachers that if their student learns, they feel like they've accomplished something.
Yes.
And they've helped other people.
I mean, and having taught people things that they had difficulty with, I will say that feeling rocks. When you actually get to watch somebody who you've helped make sense out of something that they were having absolutely no luck with. That experience, getting to be part of that, actually really is, like, fucking brilliant.
Why are those teachers not using ALG? Like, I feel like people don't realize this type of method requires a lot of work. So, like, if I wanted to use ALG in a classroom, I need a speaking partner. That means I have to find someone that I can use or, like, interact with in class.
In what would be a very unnatural sort of interaction as well. Okay.
For my students to observe.
Okay, I'm gonna sort of pause here because I want to find out what the hell ALG actually is. I'm gonna just look this up. ALG language method. Okay, J. Marvin Brown. Okay. He was an American linguist who studied the evolution of Thai and related languages, supervised the teaching of English and Thai at AUA Language Center in Bangkok, Thailand, and developed the ALG approach to language teaching. Okay, I don't need his CV. I want to know what this is about. Okay, here we go. Brown is notable for... Okay, I'm just so you can see what we're looking at. When you look up ALG language learning method on Google, you get this guy's YouTube page, Wikipedia page, and that's what I'm looking at here. Oh wait, there is a specific page. No, there isn't a specific page. That actually says something in itself, like that ALG doesn't have its own Wikipedia page. Like, literally, you click on the ALG link here, and it just takes you to the paragraph you're already on. Claims that adults can effortlessly become near native or native-like in second languages if they learn them implicitly through experience, okay, without consciously practicing speaking. Brown came to believe that, contrary to critical period hypothesis, which, I mean, there are lots of problems with the critical period hypothesis, and other people than Brown have also chipped away at it. that adults have lost the ability to learn languages as children do. There's that phrase again, which is a massive oversimplification. Adults actually retain this ability, but obstructed by using abilities they have gained to consciously study, practice, and analyze language. Okay. So this is related to input-based methods. Okay, Brown's goal had always been to find a way for an adult to become native in their second language, said David Long, beginning with Thai under the Army method, the audiolingual method. Okay, influence, but... Okay, Brown experienced a sudden conversion upon reading a copy of The Natural Approach by Stephen Krashen and Tracy Terrell in 1983. Okay, so the similarity to Krashen is not surprising. He he came at this through Krashen. Okay. So he is doing an input-based approach, and he's just doing a particular way of. He's just coming up with a particular application of it. He returned to Bangkok to give a demonstration term of Natural Approach Thai to students and observers funded by the U.S. Information Agency, the CIA. Interesting. That is like the propaganda wing of the U.S. Intelligence Services, or used to be. Now it's called something else, I believe. From the start, his approach differed from that of Krashen and Terrell in significant ways. There was no speaking practice on the part of students, in accordance with Krashen's input hypothesis that speaking ability emerges on its own after enough competence has been developed by listening and understanding. Okay, but yeah, so he doesn't do, no speaking practice, but how would you gauge that the speaking ability has emerged on its own if you're not occasionally trying it out anyway? We're trying to find out what will happen if we hold strictly to this part of Krashen's theory, and naming the book after what they called the approach at the time, the listening approach. Hello, Badger, and yes, I will be streaming tonight. I was just tired yesterday. I'd done some application of tongue oil to wood in extreme heat yesterday, and I just felt like relaxing and eating ice cream last night, so that's why I was off last night, but I will be on tonight. Students who adhered to that long silent period by first listening to Thai for hundreds of hours without trying to speak were able to surpass, so just passive listening. So that is not, that is not the only way to do an input-based method. Yes, I would imagine the agency has an interest in linguistics. While other students who tried to speak from the beginning found themselves struggling with broken Thai like all long-time foreigners. Okay. This is Brown himself is the only one to say this. What's interesting to me about this as well is, yes, I was, no, T-U-N-G, Erica. Okay. That this guy apparently relies heavily on Krashen. But Krashen doesn't mention this guy, as far as I can tell. Krashen, as far as I can tell, does not rate this guy. After sleeping all night, I slept all day. That sounds like a reasonably good weekend plan, I have to say, Badger.
And then how long does this last for? Because, like, my students are, well, they're considered advanced, but they're not advanced. Like, the label we give them is advanced, but they're more like intermediate. But whenever I see ALG stuff, it's always, like, very early learners, you know, like, don't speak until after, like, 600 hours or 1,000 hours or whatever. Well, this is kind of hard because my students have been learning English at least since 3rd grade. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, English is such an outlier on so many of these things, precisely because English input is everywhere. Like, the only cohort, I would say, of people in a significant number in the world who actually are not like bombarded with English input from like birth, basically, all all over their daily lives, would be in the DPRK. Like, anywhere else you go, there is English everywhere. It was revarnishing these planters and my veg trolley. The planters were a particular pain in the ass because there were plants in them already, and they were extremely heavy, so they couldn't be lifted up, so I had to squat down to do this, which my ankles weren't very happy with me for, and
usually it's for a couple hours a week. So even if you did 3 hours a week since 3rd grade until college, that's a lot of hours. And many of them will have like cram school outside of their regular school. So they'll have an additional 1 to 2 hours of English a week. So it's 4 to 5 hours of English every week for what? 13 years, 12 years? It depends on when they started, because some start really young and some start a little later. Like some start at the age of 3 and some will start at the age of like 6 or 7. Some even 8, I think. It just depends on the school and it depends on the province.
Here's the thing, if you look at the baby, right, this baby is exposed to the language 24/7.
First of all, no.
again, oversimplified analogy.
If a baby could be exposed for 24/7, they sleep for like 16 fucking hours a day.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they could be exposed for the whole time.
Maybe he is a believer in like learning while asleep, that sort of thing.
When they are awake, they're not.
It is a trolley, a wheeled trolley with a shelf on the bottom for various gardening related implements, and then various slots on top for plants. In this case, various chilies, some hot and spicy oregano, some epazote, and some lemon thyme. Oh, and various kinds of basil.
Constantly being talked to or with. And part of the problem is I'm assuming he thinks that as long as there's input around, babies will just learn. Research shows that babies who are like talked at, so for example like a TV show, compared to like if they're read to by an adult like interacting with them, the babies who watch TV don't learn compared to the babies who are interacted with. There are some studies.
Which kind of makes, if we're going to put this in the terms of the input hypothesis, one could say that the input that is coming from somebody who is close to you, who you have some kind of a relationship with, a voice that is familiar in that way is going to be more compelling and therefore more likely to provide the sort of input that is useful. Plus, we also there's like caregiver talk and stuff like that, where like you're more likely, I would imagine, a caregiver who actually knows a baby is more likely to get an idea of what their level of understanding is, and so that speech is more likely to be more targeted to that, because they're getting they're getting all sorts of nonverbal cues back indicating understanding or the absence thereof.
That show they might learn a little bit, but generally speaking they don't really learn that much because babies need interaction to learn. So just hearing words around isn't going to be enough for them to learn them. They actually have to be able to interact with them.
So his chance.
Yeah, and the thing is, that is this sort of like this ultra passive approach, which is what ALG seems to be. All I've read is the wiki and seen his videos discussing it. Lacks any kind of interaction. Which, is a limitation of it. It's less likely to be engaging as a result, I would say.
Of encountering that specific piece of language, whatever that is, making a reservation or whatever, are just way higher. Now, I've never been exposed to these words like reservation or whatever, but I do think that because I have this whole foundation, years of input of Japanese and this whole language model in my brain with connections.
Okay, but if you watch, like, what kind of input are you getting then? Is what I don't understand. But okay, because of course you can have a very robust model of a language in your head with a significant vocabulary and stuff like that. and lack certain words. Like we all do. Or lack words for certain things because you've never had an occasion to do that particular thing in that particular language. Which again is, I think, something that is universal. What will only vary is the things that are absent. But I mean, I just don't. I mean, it's sort of a. These are not uncommon things. You could certainly find like content where people are like making hotel reservations or booking a restaurant or talking about food. Like, how have you not got any vocabulary related to food and sleeping? Or is that not what he's saying? I don't understand this.
If I were to encounter a situation like this, then it would probably be definitely be way easier for me to internalize that language. Whereas if you took someone who's been learning Japanese for like 1 month or something, yes, he can learn, or 30 hours, right? If you learn in those 30 hours how to make a reservation, yes, he can do that, but he's gonna have to rely mostly on remembering that, because there's no like language model yet in his brain. It's just pure.
I mean, I think what he's saying is making some sense, but I think it depends. Like, if you're getting a bunch of input in that period, and it includes, you know, discussion of these topics in a way that is made digestible to somebody in those early stages, when you're going to need a lot of non-linguistic cues in order to work with that, then maybe they will actually have a good understanding of those things. I mean, we're literally just talking about topics here. I mean, admittedly, some topics are easier to work with for a beginning learner than others, just because abstraction is difficult if you don't have a whole lot of language to, be able to manipulate it. But yeah, I don't quite understand where he's going with this, and maybe part of that is not understanding anything about like his understanding or knowledge of Japanese, because he's kind of vague on that.
Remembering that he can rely on. He cannot.
Okay, first, I'm going to get to this in a second too. I want to say this. So this language model he's referring to is also misinformed, because if you speak in L1, guess what you already have in your brain? You have a linguistic system, and your new language uses that old linguistic system. How interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it relies on that. I mean, the degree to which it relies on that, and the degree to which it innovates outside of that, will depend a lot on the similarity of the L2 and how much time you are engaging with it. But yeah, I mean, that is like kind of where you're starting out. And even actually before you have acquired an L1, you still have a linguistic system. We have a certain substrate that results in language of a certain sort in the first place. Otherwise, we would not be developing language at all.
This model he's talking about, like, you need to hear enough of this to develop a model. Guess what? Even if you were to develop a new model, your new model still relies on the old language system. So it's not like you just get a new language and now all of a sudden you speak it fluently and you no longer need the first language. Like, there are many studies. Even I'm fluent in Chinese. My boyfriend is a native Chinese speaker, and guess what? Sometimes when he speaks Chinese, he uses English syntax in his sentences. And that's because his L2 is now interfering with his L1. So this is like linguistic transfer. There's a lot of studies.
Yeah, I mean, that happens.
Clearly somebody who's never read research on it.
Not rely on, he cannot truly internalize that piece of language. Now also, if you look at a baby, and this is probably the most important thing, is that his goal is not to speak because, well, he can speak and he's not concerned with speaking. Now,
I mean, I would say, depending on what age range we're talking about, the issue is not actually necessarily forming intentions yet of any kind. And then at a certain point, the goal very much is to speak, and that, you know, that intention is very much there, and the success of the attempts will be extremely variable. Like, I mean, this is another problem. I mean, this is already an oversimplification of input-based language learning methods when we put in these terms, but then we have like this massive oversimplification of early childhood development. Like, there is a whole range of different kinds of mental activity going on in the first 3 years of life. That is actually, there's a whole lot of different stuff going on, and what you're talking about is going to, what kind of intentions being formed is going to vary heavily. You can't just talk about it like this in this generalized way.
For a baby, his circumstances are actually perfect because he is not expected to have conversations with people.
Okay. He's partially right. Like, obviously people don't expect babies to talk. But from the very moment that babies are born and they cry, guess what they're doing? They're communicating.
Yeah, and that starts out, a lot of things start out very unconscious and reflexive and without any necessarily knowledge of the level of control that one might have over it. And then gradually that changes. One of the first things that changes is the awareness of the control, the awareness that, oh, actually those noises are coming from me. Oh wow, those noises have certain results. Oh, those results are actually kind of useful. Okay, now I know that if I make this noise, useful results will occasionally occur. And stuff like that. And, there is a gradual raising of consciousness around all of those things, which is why, speaking so broadly is problematic as hell.
Like, there have been studies that, like, mothers can distinguish the cries of babies. So, like, when a baby cries one way, they're hungry. When they cry another way, they're agitated or irritated, or they have to change their diaper, or something, like they're tired. Like, mothers, there have been studies where mothers can actually distinguish these sounds. To say that babies don't communicate or they don't need to is kind of silly. We don't expect them to, but they do. Like, from the moment they're able to communicate, they communicate in the ways they're capable of doing. I've seen videos, too, of really young babies learning sign language, like please or more or whatever.
Yeah, this is the thing.
I used to teach children. It was kind of like an early education center. We just did, basically it was like teaching parents how to like play with their babies, which sounds crazy, but we had like a gym class. So for really young, like I think we had 6 months babies, we would teach certain words to parents for sign language to kind of help them so that their baby could communicate, so like if they pooped their diaper or something. And then we would teach it to the parents and tell them, like, whenever you change their diaper, like, use this, and over time your baby will learn it and they'll be able to use that symbol to tell you something before they can actually talk. Yeah, so babies are communicating like from the get-go, and to just say that they don't communicate.
I mean, not exactly from the get-go, but from the moment that they realize they've got any kind of control over anything and begin to understand that this sort of difference between, this distinction between me and other people, and that there is an interaction there, they immediately, they are definitely trying to find ways to use that interaction in order to get needs met or understand what is going on or whatever.
Is obviously misinformed, but he's right. Like, we don't have the social expectation of a baby to talk to us. Like, it's not like I'm going to ask the baby, "What do you want?" And if they don't answer, I'm not going to give them anything.
And his goals are not to converse with people, so he doesn't want it himself, and he's not expected to.
Well, actually, part of the reason babies scream so much is because they are trying to communicate some sort of thing that they need, and nobody's fucking understanding it, or they're not responding. And they, of course, can't necessarily tell whether that's because they're not making themselves understood or they're being ignored. Like, they are certainly trying to put something out there in order to get a response, and that response is for the most part a need that needs to be met.
He wants it. That baby wants it. He just can't, which is why they get irritated. And if you have a baby or you work with babies, and you'll know.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing between this guy and Evil D. I feel like neither of them have ever been around small children, or maybe they never themselves were them.
When a baby gets old enough to like point and do gestures, but they can't articulate what they want, if they don't get, like, let's say they point at something and you don't know, so you're just guessing, they will get irritated over time if you don't get what they want.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's frustrating. As an adult, I'm like that, right? Like, if I'm trying to say something and I can't quite articulate what I'm trying to express, of course I'm going to get irritated. That's a normal human reaction.
Alright,
Yeah.
so baby don't really have the goal of speaking, so maybe we should...
Like, I mean, this is one of the annoying things about this sort of Angelo van Roye, Evil D, and, reaction fest, is that neither of them seem to know anything about certain aspects of this, and so they try to, like, speculate about it in ways that are, like, variously annoyingly wrong.
either, right? But
Babies also don't need to wipe their ass. Someone else to do it for them. So I guess I don't have to wipe my ass, you guys.
that doesn't work because we chose to learn a second language. I chose to learn a second language. So if I didn't have a goal, then
Well, not everybody chooses it, though. Sometimes people find themselves in an environment where they have to. Like, I mean, and that includes in early childhood. Like, for example, say your family are refugees, and you spent like the first 2.5 years of your life in a place where everybody was speaking, I don't know, Igbo. Everybody was speaking Igbo, and now all of a sudden you find yourself in an environment where like people are speaking French. Because, and now you didn't choose to learn French. You did not choose to acquire French. But you are now surrounded by a bunch of French. You will be acquiring it. And for the same, reason you were acquiring Igbo in the first place. Because it is the language that is around you and it is necessary in order to, like, interact with people and express and satisfy needs and communicate and be understood and everything. So, I mean, it isn't always a choice. Sometimes you're stuck with it.
why am I even learning a second language, right? And this is my other problem. For some reason, we expect that with learning the
People who live in places where the local language and the national language aren't the same. Yes, exactly, Erica. Yeah, there are lots of situations where it is not actually chosen, it becomes necessary. Or, it's just sort of thrust on you in one way or another.
language, we eventually learn to speak as well. And this is a problem because learning a language and learning to speak are two different things. They're two different.
My friend's mom wrote a thin book to teach parents how to communicate with their babies to eventually get to the place where babies don't use diapers. It was called Trick or Treat. I feel like I may have heard of that.
Process. Like we expect to be able to speak the language as a result of learning, but that's the thing. Speaking is not necessarily does not necessarily come from learning. I mean, there are two ways I can take that phrase. Speaking does not necessarily come from learning. I can take that in this sort of very deadpan, objective way and say, in the sense that it is a process, it is the result of a process of acquiring an ability. I think it always comes from learning. But you can also take it in the funny sense and say that, yes, there are people whose speaking very clearly does not come from learning, and you can tell. It could be, and it usually is, if you're, for example, learning naturally. But it doesn't have to be. Like I said, you can simply remember a phrase and then say it out loud. You're also speaking, but that's not as a result of...
again, we have the trouble with... this is the thing about the word natural. What exactly does that mean? That is...
So there are two different skills, and they don't correspond with each other, necessarily. So if you look at a skill, for example, driving a car, driving a motorbike, in my case, because that's something I like to do.
And Netherlands.
Or dancing, for example. These
Not
are
on a
skills
motorbike.
where you practice the same thing over and over again, and then you get better at those things, right? It's very simple.
Okay.
With languages, it's different because first what you do is you build this model, right? You expose yourself to the language.
Various incumbent national leaders. I can think of various of them for whom this is true.
Your brain is building this second brain, this language learning.
You're not building a second brain. Gap.
Great idea for a fucking Bela Lugosi, parody movie, though. You have this like mad scientist character who's building a second brain. Why? I'm glad you asked. He's building a second brain because he wants to learn Italian.
I don't know where he's getting this information from.
I mean, I think we can take it as read that this is a metaphor. He's like, I mean, it sounds like, okay, so he's into ALG. And what I learned of ALG just now is that it is somebody massively oversimplifying Krashen. So this is somebody massively oversimplifying somebody who was already massively oversimplifying Krashen. I think we can take it as read that these things are not meant to be made literally, taken literally.
His ass, I guess, but you're not building a second brain. Also, babies do practice. Like, babies do practice language skills. They practice babbling. They practice making sounds. One of the studies I'm going to talk about in a minute, I think the guy's name is Deb Roy or something, but he actually followed the birth, like his son learning words. Like, he calls it the birth of words, and it's like his son learning the word water, and for a long time he would say gaga, and he actually plays this like audio clip. I think it's like 60 seconds or something, but of the child going from gaga to water, and you can hear the child.
Yeah, the phonetic shifts. Okay, that's very interesting.
Sitting around with the sounds, and you can even hear there are times where he switches from gaga to waga, and then he goes back to gaga, and then eventually like wada, 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 water. Like he will do this switch, So it's like babies constantly play with the sounds, which is the opposite of what he's saying. Like babies don't do this; they just sit there and they poop their pants, and then they learn language, and they don't.
Yeah. I mean, and it's sort of weird listening. There's this idea of just total passivity that seems to be what Angelo Faroyan seems to think is how this works. And then you have this weird-ass idea that Evil D has, where the minute you pop out of the womb, you've already got very clear intentions, and you're just ticking the boxes and practicing in order and just like practicing in order to get specific objectives. MST3K brain guy. Yeah, building a second brain.
To speak and like just misinformed.
This language model in your brain with neural connections. After that comes speaking, if you want to practice that speaking. But that's
like, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course I mean, they're constantly they're experimenting with fucking everything. Once they manage to they realize they've got the level of control to start actually interacting with, their universe, their surroundings, they're like experimenting constantly, often to their detriment. If nobody's paying close enough attention. But, yeah, see, here's the thing, like, okay, if you read Krashen, what he says is that after a certain amount of, the right kind of comprehensible input, you reach a certain point where you're able to go from passively from not understanding shit to passively comprehending most or all of what you're hearing, to actively being able to produce. And, he says speech emerges as we get to that point within this implicit learning process. And emerges means you start doing, obviously it starts happening spontaneously. At a certain point, you're going to be able to. That doesn't mean your speech is going to be immediately perfect. It means you're going to be in a position to start expressing things, however haltingly. And the more you do that, the more and he goes further and says, the conversations, the interactions you have when you start speaking are also going to be sources of input, which are further going to help you develop the model specifically of your target language, which overlaps with, but is also an extension of, an expansion on the model you already have of whatever your L1 is. And that is going, it's going to be a positive feedback loop, and gradually you're going to get better at understanding and the speaking and stuff. But he seems to have this idea that it just sort of pops out, and there's like no... it's like, again, it's like he's like oversimplifying a guy who was already oversimplifying Krashen. And not entirely even understanding him.
Speaking comes from learning the language first, having an understanding of the language, having that model in your brain first. If you speak from the start without that whole model, then it's a different story, because then you can really only rely on...
Like, it's not a whole model. Like, there's never a whole model. The fact is, our models of every fucking language that we have any knowledge of are constantly developing. They're never full. Like, I mean, even, like, take whatever the language is that you've spoken the longest, whether that's English or, Lingala or German or Italian or Marathi or whatever. Your model's never complete. You're constantly expanding on that model and modifying that model, because you're constantly having interactions, some of which will challenge assumptions of that model. Because you'll encounter somebody who speaks the language but speaks it differently, and then suddenly you have to expound that model to account for the fact that he doesn't say stop him from doing the thing, he says stop him doing the thing. And you've never heard that before, but you understand it, you comprehend it. You just, your mental model of how, how English works did not account for this possibility, and now it does. There's no such thing as a full model. These things are changing constantly. There's constant development as long as you are engaging with a language.
Remembering those phrases that you're speaking, which
These are all dynamic things.
I talked about that before, right? So let's say if I say a phrase in Japanese.
Yes,
for example,
exactly. Thank you, Erica.
Right? A phrase.
Hang on, I missed that.
For example, I talked about that before, right? So let's say if I say a phrase in Japanese, for example, 勉強になりました, right? A phrase that I know instinctively. I know how to say it, right?
Now I'm interested to know what he thinks that means. Because, that's an interesting... That is a very interesting phrase to just sort of have. That is a correct phrase. 勉強になりました. That is a sort of... that is a polite formula that is used in Japanese. It is something that you would use to thank somebody for explaining something to you, or to say that you were impressed watching them work. You learned a lot from watching them work. You would say, 先生の仕事ぶりを見て大いに勉強になりましたよ. We don't have great words for this in English. It is one of many important social graces in Japanese, though. And I'm kind of curious what he thinks it means. Because you would call that advanced vocabulary. And I have no idea where he is in Japanese, because I've never actually heard him do anything in Japanese. I've just heard him talk about this.
And that's a result of me learning Japanese, listening to Japanese for like 5+ years, 6, 7, whatever, a long time, right? And then there's person B, okay? Person B...
Yeah, but, what I'd be interested in is, again, what he thinks the use case for 勉強になりました is. Oh, hey, I just noticed the time. Yes, it is time to wrap up. Thank you to Joe Renee Languages for suggesting this. This looks quite interesting. I have a GoFundMe going for a translation project I'm working on right now. I'm trying to raise $300 to do some translation into Spanish of legal advice for when La Migra comes knocking. I've raised 45 out of 300 so far. All sharing and donating is greatly appreciated, and I will be back on Friday at 4:30 p.m.